A judge ordered Bucks County, Pennsylvania to extend its in-person voting option and not turn people away who show up to apply. Republicans sued Bucks County in suburban Philadelphia after reports that an unprepared election office was sending voters away. The lawsuit said there were long lines on Tuesday, the final day to apply in person for a mail-in ballot, and that sites where people could apply were closing early. The lawsuit sought a one-day extension till 5 p.m. Wednesday, but the judge ruled the county had to give voters till businesses close on Friday to apply. Republican National Committee Chair Michael Whatley said this was a landmark victory. He vowed the RNC would, quote, leave no stone unturned in ensuring a fair election. The County Board of Elections and Department of State did not respond to a request for comment before broadcast time. Pennsylvania is gearing up for a large voter turnout this time around. Hundreds of voting machines were locked, wrapped in plastic, and lined up to be delivered to local precincts.
What we're looking at are our voting machines that are packaged up and ready to go out to the precincts. We have 1,327 polling places in Allegheny County, and that's spread amongst 766 actual locations.
Trays containing thousands of mail-in ballots are being stored in a secure location before envelopes are removed on Tuesday. Unlike some other states, Pennsylvania does not allow early counting of mail-in ballots. The ruling on ballot applications is one among several legal interventions this election. On the same day, the Pennsylvania Commonwealth Court ruled Philadelphia officials had to count mail-in ballots even if they lack a handwritten date on the envelope.
A law enforcement official says the devices used to cause fires in ballot drop boxes in Portland and Vancouver this week were marked with the message, Free Gaza. Investigators are searching for a suspect and a vehicle believed to be linked to the arson.
Gaza
the official said a
Israel.
third device placed at a different drop box in Vancouver, Washington earlier this month carried the words, Free Palestine. The arson attacks destroyed hundreds of ballots in Vancouver on Monday. The official said authorities are investigating if the person who left the devices had pro-Palestinian views or just wanted to create confusion. Surveillance images show a vehicle pulling up to a Portland drop box before a fire was discovered inside. Police describe the suspect as a white man aged 30 to 40 who is balding or has very short hair. They say he is believed to be an experienced metal worker and may be planning additional attacks. No arrests have been announced.
After the break, Israeli forces report striking more than 100 Hezbollah terrorist targets in Lebanon.
Good.
A number of people were injured when a rocket reportedly hit a UN facility in Lebanon.
Meanwhile, North Korea said it conducted an intercontinental ballistic missile
They're
test
told to
this
move
morning.
back.
More on the war going on there.
The deadliest flooding in Spain's modern history has left 95 dead and buildings and bridges destroyed. A look at the aftermath of the disaster.
In Lebanon, Israel ordered residents to evacuate certain areas, and hours later reported striking over 100 Hezbollah targets that same day. Firefighters were seen responding to the aftermath, and other emergency crews responded to areas in the Bekaa region where they put out fires and searched the rubble for casualties. The Lebanese city of Sidon was also hit. A resident shared his thoughts.
This street is an ordinary residential street with ordinary civilian residents. There are no camps, no weapons, nothing here. Sidon has always been safe.
Israeli forces said they killed dozens of Hezbollah terrorists throughout Lebanon, including the deputy commander of Hezbollah's elite forces. State Department spokesperson Matthew Miller said the U.S. supports Israel's right to go after legitimate Hezbollah targets, but should do so in a way that does not threaten the lives of civilians.
But of course, when you are conducting a military operation in an area where civilians are operating, and we know that Hezbollah does embed itself among civilian targets, you want to actually see civilians evacuate.
Meanwhile, Hezbollah terrorists in Lebanon fired a barrage of rockets into northern Israel, one of which injured 2 farm workers. The Iran-backed Hezbollah terrorist group began firing rockets into Israel after the October 7th massacre, in solidarity with the Iran-backed Hamas terrorist group in the Gaza Strip. Israeli forces also reported that a Hezbollah rocket struck a United Nations facility in southern Lebanon. The United Nations Interim Force in Lebanon, or UNIFIL, reported a number of casualties from the strike. Israel has repeatedly asked UNIFIL to leave the combat zone, where they are currently fighting Hezbollah terrorists. But a UNIFIL spokesperson said they will remain in southern Lebanon and monitor the situation. Meanwhile, Hezbollah's new leader gave his first speech since he was selected for the position, and he said Hezbollah will continue with its war plan. Israel's defense minister posted on X that the Hezbollah leader's new appointment would be, quote, temporary and not for long. Jason Perry, NTD News.
Child was killed Wednesday when a Russian-guided bomb hit an apartment block in Kharkiv. 29 other people were
Genocide by the
injured.
Russians.
Officials said the child was 11 years old.
There is no logic behind hitting residential buildings. The attacks have no military value. It is just plain terror.
On Wednesday, some allies of Ukraine spoke at the United Nations
They're gonna end
Security
up
Council
dying.
about
Most
reports
of
of
them.
North Korean soldiers being sent to Russia. North Korea's regional rivals, South Korea and Japan, have been especially concerned about this development.
We are closely this development with serious concern, including the imminent risk that these troops may take direct part in Russia's aggression against Ukraine, which would constitute a grave violation of international law, including the UN Charter.
Russia's ambassador says the Russian military's interaction with North Korea does not violate international law.
I would like to underscore that Russian interaction with the DPRK in the military and other areas is in line with international law and is not a violation of it. It's not aimed at third countries. It's not a threat for the countries of the region or the international community.
But Ukraine insists that North Korea sending troops and having those troops be trained by Russia violates a number of United Nations Security Council resolutions. U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin said earlier up to 10,000 North Korean forces have already been deployed to eastern Russia, wearing Russian uniforms and carrying Russian equipment. Early on Thursday, North Korea tested a suspected intercontinental ballistic missile, leading to concern from the U.S., South Korea, and Japan. It drew swift condemnation, with the U.S. calling it a flagrant violation of UN Security Council resolutions. South Korea's military told lawmakers Wednesday their neighbor to the north was close to conducting a seventh nuclear test.
U.S. Central Command said yesterday the military struck several ISIS terrorist camps in Syria this week. The airstrikes took place on Monday evening and targeted multiple locations and senior leaders of the terrorist group. As many as 35 terrorists were killed in the operation. The attacks followed several joint operations with Iraqi forces that targeted ISIS terrorists in Iraq. The U.S. Central Command said the recent strikes will disrupt the group's ability to plan and carry out attacks against civilians and U.S. allies in the region. They said there were no signs of civilian casualties from the strikes.
At least 95 people have been killed in possibly the deadliest flooding to hit Spain in its modern history. Local authorities said torrential rain battered the eastern region of Valencia, sweeping away bridges and buildings. Residents resumed cleaning up efforts for the second day today. Ryan Chang reports.
Scores of people have been killed in some of Spain's worst floods in recent history. Meteorologists say a year's worth of rain had fallen in 8 hours in parts of the eastern region of Valencia Tuesday. Authorities plan for more rescue operations on Thursday, and the death toll is expected to rise. In Utiel, locals combed through the mud and debris, cleaning up what's left of their livelihoods. 60-year-old teacher Encarna got emotional as she spoke about the pain she felt for all those who lost their lives in the flooding. Another Utiel resident, Grocer Amadeo Ibanez, said he felt powerless as the river rose in half an hour, and he lost almost everything in that time. Many of Valencia's farmlands were submerged. The region is a key citrus producer in the country, accounting for almost 2/3 of the citrus fruit grown in Spain, a leading global exporter. One of Spain's largest farmer groups on Tuesday said it expected significant damage to crops. Roads were closed and rail services to Madrid and Barcelona were halted due to the rain. In a televised address, Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez promised to rebuild infrastructure that was destroyed.
Coming up, Michigan voters have a new option for how to cast their ballots this year. A 2022 ballot measure gave 9 days of in-person early voting to Michiganders. Our reporter is in the Wolverine State.
Thousands of accused murderers, rapists, even terrorists pour in. Each crime they commit makes American victims. Innocent victims of Kamala's open border agenda. They were bludgeoned, raped, strangled, stabbed, shot, and murdered. Kamala created the border crisis. She won't fix it now. Make America Great Again Inc. is responsible for the content of this advertising.
Years ago, early election results. The ABC affiliate showed Vice President Kamala Harris winning the election during a Sunday broadcast. The station said the numbers showed up on the channel's broadcast of the Formula One Mexico Grand Prix on Sunday evening. It says they were not reflective of any actual vote count. The channel says the numbers were randomly generated test results and that they were sent to news organizations to check their equipment before election night. The numbers showed Harris defeating Trump 3.2 million votes to 2.9 million votes.
Yeah, right.
Michigan officials charge a Chinese citizen student for illegal voting. Meanwhile, Pennsylvania is investigating voter registration applications amid possible fraud.
NTD's Daniel Monahan has more on the cases.
The Michigan case involves a 19-year-old Chinese national, a student at the University of Michigan. He registered to vote on Sunday, signing a document vowing he was a U.S. citizen. The student later tried to retract the illegal vote. Detroit News reported that the vote can't be retracted. The student was charged with attempting to vote illegally and lying on a form to secure voter registration. Congressman John Molinar called on state leaders to take serious action against the Chinese Communist Party's attempts to influence the United States. Meanwhile, officials in York County, Pennsylvania, are investigating voter registration and mail ballot applications. Former President Trump wrote on Truth Social earlier this week that York County received thousands of potentially fraudulent voter registration forms and mail ballot applications from a third party. He also mentioned an investigation in Lancaster County. York County President Commissioner Julie Wheeler says her county received a large delivery containing thousands of election-related materials from a third-party organization. She added that the papers appeared to include completed voter registration forms, as well as mail-in ballot applications. Wheeler says if they find any suspected fraud, they will alert the district attorney's office. Pennsylvania Secretary of State Al Schmidt mentioned the investigations in York County and Lancaster County during a video briefing on Tuesday.
The department has been in touch with these counties from the very beginning to provide guidance to them as they conduct their investigations, and will continue to support them as needed.
Several days ago, officials in Lancaster County said they were investigating around 2,500 voter registration forms for possible fraud. They said the applications had fake names, incorrect addresses, and other problems. Those ballots are being linked to a large-scale canvassing operation in the state.
Ultimately, the county election offices and the investigative law enforcement agencies will determine whether any criminal charges are warranted.
Lancaster County District Attorney Heather Adams said at a news conference that 2 other unnamed counties received similar applications. She said election workers noticed that numerous applications had similarities. Adams said that although the investigation is ongoing, it appears to be an organized effort. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
There you go, cheating.
It's widely expected that Republicans will gain control in the Senate regardless of how the presidential race shapes up.
But why is that? NTD's Melina Wisecup joins us to break down the numbers.
34 Senate seats are up for grabs this cycle, most of which are held by Democrats. Republicans only need a net gain of 2 seats to take control of the upper chamber. That means they need to hold on to the 49 seats they currently have and gain 2 more. But it's highly likely that they will be able to do that. I say that because West Virginia is all but secured by Republicans. Democrats have essentially let the seat go. Republican candidate Jim Justice is leading by a large margin in the polls. Another area Republicans are likely to flip is in Montana with John Tester's seat. Democrats Democrats have tried desperately to hold on to the seat, but it being a Trump-won state, an area that Trump won by 16 percentage points in 2020, his name back at the top of the ticket, it may be a long shot for Democrats. So just with West Virginia and Montana alone, Republicans would be able to secure a bare bones majority in the upper chamber. That's even without winning any of the 5 toss-up races. The next state Republicans are highly likely to win is over in Ohio. The Democrat and Republican candidates have traded leads in the polls throughout this entire season, and it's also a Trump-won state and home to the vice presidential candidate, J.D. Vance. Democrats are trying to offset these likely GOP wins by throwing everything they have into races like Florida and Texas, but with those being solid red states with very popular candidates, those efforts may not be fruitful. So with all of this said, regardless of how the presidential race turns up, it's highly likely Republicans will take control of the Senate next year. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Melina Weisskopf, NTD News.
And big changes coming for Obamacare. House Speaker Mike Johnson vows massive changes to the Affordable Care Act if former President Trump wins. Johnson told a Pennsylvania crowd Monday that lawmakers will have a very aggressive first 100 days. The House Speaker says they want to, quote, take a blowtorch to the regulatory state. He added that taking bureaucrats out of health care is better for everybody. The Democratic Party responded to the comments and accused both Johnson and Trump of wanting to repeal the Affordable Care Act. Johnson disputes the accusation. The Health and Human Services Department says more than 40 million are insured in connection with the Affordable Care Act. The Heritage Foundation says the act doubled the cost of individual health insurance between 2013 and 2019.
When we come back, the President and the First Lady host their final trick-or-treat event at the White House. And Joe Biden dresses up to welcome new residents at Washington's National Zoo. Stay tuned.